Hello, friends. Today's special edition of Mindful Mutiny is a very serious one. I have Agape Garcia, and she is a survivor of domestic violence, and she's done a lot in California to help out with legislation that helps victims of domestic violence. We have a discussion today about the tendencies in domestic violence, things to look out for before these things happen, what it's like to be in these situations, what it was like for her to be in this kind of situation, why it's difficult to get out of them, and what she's doing to help people who are dealing with this sort of thing. So, a very important episode today, and I hope that you enjoy. Welcome to the Mindful Mutiny podcast. I'm Jeremy Van Wert. I'm a healer and transformational coach. My mission is to change lives from stress to joy, stagnation to momentum, and from burnout to hope. The Mindful Mutiny podcast is about people who thoughtfully rebel against the status quo and live the highest version of themselves. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the Mindful Mutiny podcast because that is how a wonderful little thing grows like this. So make a comment, leave 5 stars because we're wonderful. And today we are going to be talking to Agape Garcia. Agape, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. What a pleasure and honor.
Agape Garcia is dedicated to empowering others, drawing from her own experience of surviving a double attempted homicide while 8 months pregnant. This harrowing event led her to found Be Your Incredible Self and develop an outlook of extreme independence. Over the past 35 years, she has navigated through personal adversity, using her story to inspire and support others. Agape recently established a nonprofit to confront domestic violence and challenge related policies. Her journey of post traumatic growth has fueled her commitment to creating transformational programs and coaching to help others achieve emotional awareness and positive intelligence. And so, Agape, it really sounds like you have been through a lot. Can we talk about what you're doing right now? It sounds like you have a couple of different things going from a nonprofit to coaching and everything like that. Tell us what you do, Agape.
My goodness, right now I am stretched so thin because I'm extremely passionate about what I'm doing as it relates to confronting domestic violence. As you mentioned earlier, I have a nonprofit, and the name of the nonprofit is Confronting Domestic Violence. So very, very
Well
beautiful that
branded. Yeah.
the name was even available. And so I've actually had this nonprofit for about 2.5 years now. So we're still kind of in the young stage. However, we are having our first gala this October 2024, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I would love to get the word out. I'm looking to have as many people as possible. And of course, I want to do the live auction and just really help promote the awareness of how much domestic violence impacts the lives of almost, I would have to say, 1 out of 3 to 4 women and 1 out of 6 to 7 men. The numbers are astonishing. They haven't changed for decades. So I'm doing the nonprofit right now. I'm about 60% involved. 60% of my time is dedicated to the nonprofit at this moment. I also recently launched SB 553 Consulting with the DV Divas, and that is a new legislative law that recently passed in the state of California. It passed on September 30th of 2023, and the state has until July 1st of 2024 to be compliant. And when I say the state has until July 2024 to be compliant, what I mean is businesses, corporations. The only exceptions is if you are in healthcare or if you are in the law enforcement agencies. Other than that, you are mandated to be compliant. Even though it's a legislative law, they are holding Cal OSHA to be the enforcement agency. So for those that are listening that have a small business, if you have remote employees and nobody comes to the office, obviously you're exempt as well. It is if you are open to the public, then you need to be compliant with this law. And I have been in touch with Cal OSHA almost every week. I have my own personal point of contact there. So I'm getting a lot of updates on a weekly basis. And from what I understand, although they are going to be rolling it out slowly, the enforcement portion of that, anything that happens that would mandate or invite Cal OSHA to come to your doorstep, they're going to look to see if you have your workplace violence prevention plan in place. So that's what SB 553 is. It is a workplace violence prevention plan. On a federal level, OSHA already has a workplace violence policy, but it's not a prevention and it's not a plan. It's just a policy. So California is the first state in all 50 states of the United States to actually implement something to this magnitude.
So to be compliant with this, what are the things is this that employers are looking for certain behaviors or patterns of things or reportability? How do they do this?
That's a very good question because prevention is one of the hardest things, right? There's mitigation, there's prevention, there's see something, say something. This actually requires the entire company, depending on how small or big you are, a lot of stakeholders, different stakeholders in different departments to actually receive prevention training. That's what makes this so amazing is that it's prevention. How do you prevent, right? Because there's still such a huge stigma out there on people even coming forth and verbalizing or even sharing their personal business with their employer, such as I'm in a domestic violence situation and my partner may be stalking or maybe waiting for me outside and maybe it's impacting my productivity at work. And it's like, how can corporations actually create this culture where it's an open door policy and have people come and share with their managers or HR or anybody that is trained to let them know that they're having this issue, right? So it's I can't say where it starts because it's it's such a big umbrella. However, what I can say is that one of the things that is mandated under SB 553 is that you have multiple people involved. It's not just one person writing the policy and then you sit down in front of a computer, for 1 hour once a year to get the training. It's not like that. They have to be, there is a proactive and a response mechanism that needs to be in place as well. If you think about EAP programs, employee assistant programs, where they have, assistance for mental health, assistance for gamblers, for porn addicts, for alcoholics, this is something that I'm seeing and believing that will start being an option and or embedded in that EAP program because we're talking about real time victims here. So if you're a small corporation and you don't have security, usually security, physical security is usually outsourced. It's usually a third party vendor that comes in and it typically falls under facilities or HR. And if you don't have that, then it's just your own people, your own employees that need to be trained and be aware and figure out what to do. So it's on such a broad spectrum. My recommendation is if you don't have that outsourced physical security, then you build a business continuity with your local law enforcement, right? Build a business continuity with your local neighbors, or neighbors meaning corporate neighbors, and see, hey, maybe if they have physical security, perhaps they can like do some rounds or be a part of your property, your premise, right? There's so much that we could get into on this.
No, it's so great because these are the practical things. And it was a few minutes ago that you mentioned that your organization is going to be having a gala in October. How does somebody get in touch with that? How do they find information about it? I want to put that website in our description, but can you just say
Oh, yes,
how it would
definitely.
be that people would get in touch with that and buy a ticket?
Confrontingdomesticviolence.org.
Well, that's simple enough, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it
All
is.
right. All right. And I would imagine that you said that this is 2 years old, that you would have at this point really started to gain some traction because this is something that so many people are dealing with.
Absolutely. We have gained traction. I actually had my own podcast at one point named Confronting Domestic Violence. It was a TV show. I still do some podcasts every now and then, but I'm really focused on the operations and the program that the nonprofit is here for, and that is to help real-time victims relocate when they have a safe place to go, but not the financial means to get there. And that's what this gala is all about. This gala is to raise funds to actually be able to help families relocate when they need to. So we are not counselors or resource driven organization that that can provide you every single program that's available out there. Our main concern and our main purpose is to get you to safety as quickly and as safely as possible. And so we're not here to convince anybody what they need to do or what they should do. It's when you're ready and you know that you have a place to go, that's when we step in. So we coordinate with local law enforcement to stand on premise while the movers are there. So we help you up to two-bedroom apartment or home and send you on your way.
Mm. You talked about some statistics a few minutes ago, and I wanted to kind of dig a little bit more into those statistics about men versus women in domestic violence situations. And I do know that there's an obvious physical power differential between the average woman and the average man. I would imagine, though, that a lot of men suffer from domestic violence and they don't report it because they just, for whatever reason, they feel that they shouldn't, or they there's some shame involved, or things like that. Is there anything that you can kind of talk about with regard to men and domestic violence, the thing that men deal with as well?
I sure can. I actually know quite a few men personally, as well as men that I have interviewed. And back to that social stigma, right? Some of the
Yeah,
people that I don't think I've ever interviewed a man actually. As many as I've spoken to, they did not want to be interviewed,
yeah, sure,
not
sure.
publicly. So what I have learned is that, for a majority of men that are dealing with domestic violence, as we all know, it's a large spectrum that falls under that umbrella. Most of them is narcissistic behaviors, where the woman is more verbally abusive, financially abusive, will say no to certain things that they would, typically say yes to in a loving relationship. So, sexually is what I'm going at.
Mhm.
Um, and it's very slow. It's not like a overnight or like a physical altercation and then it's over the next day. It's I don't hear that. It's more of that verbal, financial, and sexual, the more of the narcissistic behaviors. So they don't really realize it until years later. It's not anything that is exposed to the naked eye. It
Yeah.
happens over time.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of exactly what it is that you're talking about in some of the marriage work that I've done with people, and that that everybody is every kind of person, I shall say, is capable of harming other people. And people use the abilities that they have available to them to do that. And so whether they are physically stronger, whether they have the ability to financially abuse somebody, these kinds of things, they really do affect people's lives for a very long period of time. And again, kind of the awareness that you're building in companies and agencies and stuff like that. Now, a quick question about this: why is medical and law enforcement exempt from this? What is this?
Okay, so the healthcare industry and the law enforcement industry is exempt from SB 553 because they already have their own policies and procedures in place
Okay.
to confront or combat the domestic violence in their industries.
Oh, thank you for clearing that up. I wasn't aware of that. That's really fantastic. And now, um, you've just started this. It sounds like it's going really well. What is it that you want to grow this all into, this nonprofit that has been around for about 2 years?
So yeah, so exactly. So I know I'm talking about both SB 553 and confronting domestic violence, and obviously both are about confronting domestic violence. One is, being more reactive, responsive, and helpful, while the other one is trying to prevent, right? But also providing the resources. So, what I would like to do, SB553consulting.com is where you can find me as it relates to helping you with your prevention plan and being OSHA compliant to avoid fines. What I'm hoping to do is actually fund the nonprofit from the consulting business. So keeping them very separate from one another. And that's my plan. That's my goal. Obviously, I'm like I mentioned before, I'm having the gala as well. But again, all funds are going towards the program and the operations of the business, helping families with children to relocate when they have that safe place to go, but not the means to get there.
Yeah, I'll bet you that there's a lot of grants out there that are really helpful in the work that you do for domestic violence.
Well, I can tell you that it's very unfortunate that the grant money is going down instead of up. That they are decreasing their funding opposed to increasing their funding, specifically in the state of California, which is I don't even have words for that. I don't understand. I mean, we if they realize how impactful and how important domestic violence is, that they created this SB 553 law to have corporations now help people, their employees. Why would they decrease their funding for the help that's needed? It's kind of contradicting. But again, that I'm bridging the gap. I love bridging the gap.
Well, now you talk about the consulting thing. Is the Be Your Incredible Self that consulting that you do? Is that what you? Oh, go for it. Go for it. You got so much going on.
Oh my gosh, I told you I'm stretched so thin. So Be Your Incredible Self was actually something that I had a vision for in helping other people, not realizing that it was actually really helping me at that moment. So now what I'm doing is I'm tacking that on to the the tail end of the confronting domestic violence, meaning that when this family gets relocated and they're settling into their new space, moving out is the physical part. That's the easiest part. Moving on is the most difficult. So that's where that coaching comes in. So I decided to kind of put that coaching the into the nonprofit at the tail end as an added additional resource for the family. So I also have collaborated with some hypnotherapists for the children. If the parent is open to that, and this is all to prevent the cycle of return. So that's where the Be Your Incredible Self comes in. Yes, I can do that separately. You don't need to be, a part of domestic violence at all. Be Your Incredible Self is for everybody. But I have decided to actually, become a partner with confronting domestic violence and offering that service after the families have relocated. That's where the post traumatic growth comes in as well.
I've done like I said, a lot of work with couples, and there might be a woman or a man in the relationship that has never disclosed. They said that their childhood was kind of rough, but then they start disclosing what happened. And sometimes the violence is so awful that their spouse just sits there with their mouth open, not ever having heard this stuff. And as a product of actually trying to help a couple heal, I will make them describe it in vivid detail, from what it sounded like to what it felt like. And then I'll watch men who come in, big, tough dudes, and they'll be shivering in fear while they're talking about it and crying. And it's the first time that their wives have seen them talk this way, but they were that little boy in the corner just covering their ears and listening to mom get beat. And we're talking decades ago.
Mhm.
And these wounds, they last for so long in a person, and they cause the escapism, the gambling, the drinking, the other things that harm children in the future. And so when a child has to listen to that kind of thing and they go to sleep and they dream about it and these sorts of things, the wounds of these things that just goes on, it's that intergenerational trauma that happens for families. And so, I mean, the work that you're doing to intervene on these things and to get these families away and to provide hypnotherapy for the children and all of this sort of stuff, it is absolutely God's work. I'm so happy for what it is that you're doing, and you're so busy.
I am, and let me tell you, the post-traumatic growth is, I believe, I didn't even know that it was such a thing. I just learned about this maybe 4 years ago, because when I was sharing my story with someone I worked with, they said, "Oh my gosh, you are the definition. This is what post-traumatic growth is about." And the moment she shared that to me, I started doing my research. I'm looking it up. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yes, it's the resilience that we have as human beings. We have choices. Do you want to be better? Do you want to be bitter? What did you learn from the situation? Do you want to repeat it? Do you want to break? Do you want to break it?" We all have choices, and it's hard to see when you are emotionally blinded or blinded by your emotions, right? And so it's really when you're able to kind of take a step back and see yourself outside of yourself, if that makes sense. If if
Mhm.
if your story, if you were hearing your own story from somebody that you love or a best friend, what would you say? What would that support be? What would that response be? And that response and that support is the same that you deserve from yourself. Okay. And I'm also a high certified high performance coach through Brendan Burchard. So that definitely helped catapult the Be Your Incredible Self coaching, because I incorporate a lot of what I learned from him and what that coaching is about, and embed that into the emotional intelligence and being able to understand and really know where your emotions live in your body, so you can control your triggers and be responsive instead of reactive.
You're talking my language.
Okay, I
I
told you.
love it, I love it. Tell me about the coaching work that you do, because I'm really interested in, your layout, how long you've been doing it, and who you work with and everything.
Well, thank you. So I've actually been coaching before I realized it was a thing. I've been a lifeline for my friends and family for so long. I didn't even know like coaching was a thing until the floodgates opened, right? I was like, "Oh, there's a name for it? Okay."
Nice, nice.
So yeah, so really, I connect with a lot of different people. It doesn't always have to fall under the umbrella of domestic violence. I also connect with high performers, high achievers. And it I mean, I don't know how to articulate this properly, but my clients are typically women who are looking to overcome their insecurities and their blanket of doubts. I help them really see who they are and have clarity around their purpose, around who they influence, around what their passions are, and just uncloud all of the all of the unclarity that's there, because I've learned that a lot of people that have gone through situations, traumas in their life, again, it doesn't have to be domestic violence, just traumas in general, loss of a loved one, you name it, we lose ourselves. And being able to identify who we are becomes this hurdle that seems like we can never jump over. So I kind of come in and say, well, who are you not? If you don't know who you are, I know you know who you're not. And if we can start eliminating who you're not, then we can start defining more and more of who you are and chip away at that. And it actually works really great. It happens a lot faster than, the old school way of, okay, well, let's start listing what you like and what you don't like. Let's be really introspective and figure it out.
No, I love that, because it's what the wonderful thing about midlife is, that you're supposed to be dropping all of the pretense that we try on younger in life, all of these roles that we think, gosh, I'm a this now, or I'm a that now. And really that kind of midlife, you're really searching for that authenticity in you, and you're striving for something that's really authentically you. And this is the thing that is really crucial, is that having some structure to that, having some help, having some accountability is something that makes all the difference in that search and that seeking and that authenticity of really trying to drill in on what you are really trying to be in this world. And so the work that you're doing is really quite amazing. I don't know how you find the time for all of it.
Well, thank you. I hear that all the time. I hear it all the time. I'm now being told that I'm starting to deprive myself while I'm doing all of these things for other people, and I need to just kind of tailor it back and kind of find that balance, which I am doing. But I wanna go back to what you were saying as
Sure.
it relates to, just figuring out who you are. What I also want to share is that when you realize who you are actually influencing, that helps also as it relates to that self work and being your authentic self, the best version of yourself. When we do the work and you realize who you are impacting, who you are influencing, who depends on you, who relies on you, who's learning from you, when you have that in your mind, if it's your kids, if you're a teacher and it's the students in your classroom, I mean, everybody has somebody that they influence and that they impact. And when you realize that what you're doing and how you're doing it is impacting them now and potentially, for the rest of their life, it helps you really think about your decisions and your actions a lot faster.
Well, it absolutely does, and that structure, that working with somebody that can help you really see that vision and help you recognize your potential for reaching higher than you would otherwise. That encouragement, it really, really makes a huge difference in the willingness that a person has to actually aim higher than they would just by themselves. And so it's really a huge thing.
That's right.
Yeah. Now you have a story about how you got here and your life that I'm really interested in because it's a very personal story and it's how you got very passionate about domestic violence and helping people. And so what is that story?
Oh boy, where do I start? Okay. Well, I'll start with just 3 years ago. It's going to be 3 years ago in just a couple days. So 3 years ago, I was driving. I was by myself. I had ordered some tom yum soup, one of my favorites, and it was sitting on the passenger seat of my car. And I was going down a windy road, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw it getting ready to fall off the seat. So I went to grab it real quick. And when you go like this, when your hand is on the steering wheel, your steering wheel goes to the left while your body is going to the right. And so I jumped over a center median. I knew it when it happened, and I was trying to hit the brakes and pull myself up. However, when I was pulling myself up, I was still pulling to the left of the steering wheel. And because of the way that my body was leaning over, I was hitting the gas instead of the brake. So I ended up hitting a tree. And if I could show you a picture of the vehicle, maybe I'll send it to you after this so you can post it up here. I had a 1% chance of surviving two times in that accident. The first time was right when I hit the tree. The car, I didn't hit anybody else. Nobody else was hurt. It was just me. But the car that was coming, the opposite direction, he was a retired paramedic. And he told me that if he was at my vehicle more than 45 seconds beyond the time he got there, I would have been gone. Then, after my first week in ICU, after they did multiple surgeries, because you could probably see the scar on my face, but
Okay.
from here,
Yeah.
head to toe. And after a week of being in ICU, they realized that my liver was missing. Where is your liver? It was disconnected and suctioned inside of my diaphragm. So there was my additional 1% chance of surviving, because if your liver is lacerated in any way, shape, or form, you know, and it goes to your bloodstream, you're done. So the trauma surgeon said, "You have a 1% chance, but we're going to do our best and see what
Oh my
happens."
goodness.
Yep. So I made it, and I was in rehab for quite some time. I had to learn how to lift my arm, write my name. I had to learn how to do everything all over again. And to be able to walk, stand, travel, and live life semi normally is a miracle all in itself. So while I was in the hospital, I'm not a TV person. Um, I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in my creator. And I was just laying there immobile, asking, why? Why did you feel like I was worth saving? Like, what is my purpose? I have been in survival mode most of my life. I don't understand. This is the first time I can't fight for myself, so I know that my the higher power is fighting for me on my
Yeah.
behalf.
Yeah.
I was just so amazed and confused and trying to figure out what, why, how, like what. And from there was when confronting domestic violence came into my mind, and I executed on it. So when I said it's 2.5 years in the making, that's because it started while I was in the hospital. I felt in my spirit that this was my purpose now. This was my purpose to help other people get through their traumas, understanding that mind over matter is real, not saying that you ignore your emotions. We have to face them, we have to confront them, we have to deal with them. But it's the mindset that you need to basically curate in order to overcome ailments, in order to overcome what you think you can't do, in order to overcome the emotional trauma that we all deal with regardless of where it comes from. And I just knew it was something spiritual, that I knew my life was saved to help other people mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Yeah. What is your spiritual foundation? What is it that ongoing gives you, strength and helps you with your compassion and your desire to keep going and fighting?
Yeah, so that's a great question because it creates a lot of controversy actually. So I am non-denominational. I just follow the King James version of the Bible. The Lord made the world in 7 days, and on the seventh day, or I'm sorry, He made it in 6 days, and on the seventh day He rested.
Yes.
And that's the Sabbath. It's the only commandment that starts with remember, because He knew we would forget. And for me, that's sundown to sundown, Friday night to Saturday night. And then then that creates more questions. Oh, so are you Jewish? Are you Muslim? You don't eat pork? You don't eat bottom feeders? I'm like, no, I just read Leviticus 23 and I follow what it says. If you have the Bible that's in black and red, read the red. That's when the Lord is speaking. The Old Testament, the New Testament supports each other. The Lord is consistent. He does not change. So when you hear about other things that are kind of going against that, that's man.
And so your prayer life has to be very powerful in your life, and it feels like you have an ongoing dialogue where a lot of inspiration comes to you, a lot of where you need to go and the people that you need to reach out to, it kind of comes from inspiration.
It does. I can share with you about a week ago. I was just walking like everybody else in the street, and there was a woman that was sitting on her blanket, and she had her hand out, but when she had her hand out, she was going like this. That told me she was hungry. She's not asking for money to go, shoot up. She's hungry. So, we went to the store and we bought banana, bread, crackers, water, and I just walked back across the street and gave her the bag of food. You don't have to give, because people are asking doesn't mean that they're begging for something that they're going to abuse it with. If they're hungry, just go get them food and give it to them. So those are, and I'm just spiritually drawn. I can't say I do that for everybody. I'll look at somebody, I'll assess make my own assessment, and then if I'm called to do it, I'm not going to ignore that. I'm going to do it. There's been times where I've had absolutely nothing, but I saw someone and I was spiritually drawn to give, and lo and behold, they had something to offer me. Like, what? How does that even happen? But it does.
Your own history with domestic violence, is that something that you speak about publicly?
Now I do, yes, because my kids are grown, and because if a tree almost took me out, why am I going to, feel like I have to hide under a rock for the rest of my life over one person? I did that for 20 years.
Yeah, and your bio says that when you were pregnant, that there was an attempted double homicide.
That is correct. Yes, I was over 1,000 miles away from where I was born and raised. He and I both decided to take our lives across the states, and I was I was 7 months pregnant when I arrived, and 8 months pregnant when I was unpacking my belongings. And when I was unpacking my belongings, I found remnants of another woman in my home. So when I confronted, the individual at that time, I was accused of going through their personal belongings. And so when I repeated myself, I was already knocked down to the floor, and he was straddling my 8-month pregnant belly while he had his left hand around my neck and his right hand closed fist punching me to the head over and over behind the ear. I had an 8-year-old daughter at the time, and she was upstairs sleeping. It was about 10:30 at night. And while I was on the floor squirming, I don't even know what type of noises I was making, but she heard. It woke her up, and she was like, "Mom, mom." And I have never heard such a scary sound come out of my child. And when that voice rang in my ears, I remembered so clearly. I said, "That's my daughter." And like my feet slammed on the floor, like flat. And I used my neck as a kickstand to thrust my hips to the ceiling to have him, roll over me. I cannot even tell you how I popped up. I do not remember how I stood on my feet after that. I just know that by the time I went around the couch, my daughter was taking her last step off that stair. I grabbed her little hand and we ran out the door like that, barefoot, in pajamas, with nothing.
Mm.
And I had to run to a neighbor's house. I saw the light, knocked on the door. I'm like, "Please, I just need to use your phone. I need to call the police." And she let me in against her husband's wishes, let me in. And she had children, and they went upstairs to play while, we dealt with the adult life situation. And within those, however long it took the cops to get there, 20 minutes, I'm sitting here wondering, like, oh my gosh, my whole entire life is now gone, devastated. I don't even know if I can have my baby. Can I raise this baby? I have no job. I'm 8 months pregnant. My family is back home, 1,000 miles away. What am I gonna do? Where am I gonna go? How is this gonna happen? So it was the most devastating moment ever.
No, I can't. I'm just seeing the images in my head and the screaming, and I'm just seeing running in the dark to the neighbors that you may not even know, and their leap of faith, kind of mom to mom, letting you in.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things that you teach is understanding and identifying red flags in people. And so is this something that you teach from experience? Is this something that's a program that you've developed in helping people understand what to look for?
So so it's a little bit of both, because see, the violence that I was used to, sorry to say that, was like verbal and emotional. I mean, excuse me, verbal and physical.
Okay.
Okay. I really was not aware of the narcissist. They're silent. They're silent. So this guy, I met his family, I met his friends. I didn't, there were no red flags in the beginning. I even had like a major fight before we left to go, across the states. And there was nothing there. There were no signs of abuse at all. And so what I learned after, time is that this individual waited for me to leave my job. So now I'm financially dependent. Waited for me to, leave where home is, which is family and friends. So now I'm solely dependent. And now here I am in a brand new space with nothing and nobody but him. So when I asked the simple question, and I was not, oh, what's this? I found this. What's this? It wasn't even like that. It was, hey, while I was unpacking, I found remnants of another woman and I want to know what's going on. I deserve to know what's happening. And again, I was accused of going through their stuff. And I repeated myself, and I couldn't even finish repeating myself before I was already on the ground. So with time, I learned what narcissistic behaviors are, and I understood that that's exactly what he did. He waited for all of those things patiently. Okay. So what I say now, or what I say and or coach and or ask these questions is, are your friends mentioning that they don't see you as often anymore? Is your family upset because you don't come around as much anymore? How much time were you spending with friends and family before the relationship versus what you're doing now that you're in the relationship? And of course, it's going to change, because when you're committed to a life partner and living together or having a family together, of course, a majority of that time is going to go there. But that does not mean that you should be completely forgetting about or not having any time for your friends or your family, because that's how we start to lose ourselves, when we are just committed to this one thing and our whole world is around this one person. I'm saying thing but person, right? When everything that we're doing, time, money, efforts, every single thing, when it is just to one person, that becomes your whole world. So what if something happened to that person? Then who are you?
No, exactly. Exactly. Now, as you're walking out of this, as you're picking up the pieces, calling family, I'm assuming, to come and get you, or what have no? What was
Are
the
you
next
kidding?
step for you?
I was so ashamed and embarrassed. Are you
Yes.
kidding me? I just
Yeah.
left. A
Uh-huh.
month later, now I'm gonna call. No,
Yeah.
nope.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the doctor put me at high risk. Yeah, I had to go to I waited to go to the emergency room in the morning, because I didn't have anywhere to go with my daughter. I wasn't gonna
Yes.
stay at my neighbor's house. That's too much. I just needed their phone, you know. Um, and plus I didn't sleep that night. I'm in a new state. I had no idea what the laws were. I didn't know if he was gonna come home that night. I knew nothing. I barricaded the door. I had an escape route to jump on the roof and fall to the patio and jump down here. I mean, it was insane. Um, so I went to the hospital the next morning to check on my unborn child while I sent my daughter to school. And the doctor put me as high risk. I couldn't take a train, I couldn't take a plane, I couldn't drive, I couldn't do anything. I was super high risk. So with that, on top of being ashamed and embarrassed, I just had to figure it out on my own.
Shame and embarrassment is something that oftentimes holds us back from doing the things that we know we need to do. And you have a saying of don't be bitter, be better. And that can kind of apply here with the show. Don't live in the shame. Do what it is that's right for you and your family. Your don't live in the dark place. Actually come into the light, because at this point you hadn't done anything wrong. However, the way that the narcissist works is they make you think that you are the person that has done the wrong things. And so now I'm assuming that you're feeling shame for everything that's happened, that somehow some of this is your fault.
Oh yeah, how could I be so stupid?
Mhm. Mhm.
How could I be so stupid? How did I not know? What did I not see? so many things, so many things. And then I realized, here I am, about to have a child, a brand new baby. I don't even know if I can't pay the rent. I'm not working. I don't have access to their bank account because we didn't have a combined bank account, and I cried endlessly, probably for about 72 hours. And then I was like, this is not going to change my situation. I had to get up, and I didn't even know that mirror work or mirror neurons was a real thing. I just knew instinctively, get in front of that mirror and talk to myself like I would talk to the person, my best friend in the whole wide world. And I did, and I sat there and I was like, oh my gosh, you don't even want to know. I'm pointing at myself, calling myself all kinds of names, and then telling myself to get my head out of my you know what. I have to figure it out. I've been through so much through my childhood, that this everything for a reason. And then I get on my knees and I said, Lord Jesus, if this is just a fraction of the pain and the suffering that you went through, and you find me good enough to share that with, I'm praising you. If you can do it and you've been through worse, when you're the most holy, the most high, and I'm your daughter, we're gonna get through this.
Mm.
And I did that every single day, while I'm standing in line for food stamps, standing in line for, you know, housing, standing in line for shelter, standing in line for any kind of assistance that you can get through, obviously the government, which not is not much.
Right. It's not much, and that's what keeps a lot of people in these terrible relationships, is because what's on the other side is a lot of lines, a lot of bureaucrats, a lot of struggle, a lot of um, downgrading a lifestyle in order to be safe. And there's um, it's obviously what needs to happen in order to leave violence behind, in order to protect children. But it's a very difficult thing, and it's one of the things that sometimes holds people back from doing what is healthy for them.
Absolutely. I called over 1,000 1-800 numbers. And if you think that you can get into a shelter in the middle of the night, you plus one, plus you're pregnant, hell no, that is not the case. It is not the case.
Hmm.
Real time resources are far and in between. That's why confronting domestic violence is so near and dear to my heart, because I'm here to help real time victims with children. That's the only caveat. You have to have kids. If you don't have kids, get in your car and go. I'm saying it like it's that easy. It's not, but those with children, it's much harder. And most of the time, you leave with what you have on your back, and you have to leave everything behind. I have spoken to so many mothers that have that story. We packed a garbage bag and left, or we just went in the middle of the night and we had to take off, leaving every single thing behind. And to leave everything behind for safety, that's hard. That's rough, especially on the child. It's very traumatic. We're talking about breaking generational trauma. You know, I don't know if there is ever going to be such a thing, because life happens and you can't predict everything. But I feel very strong about, when you have a safe place to go but not the means to get there, it will definitely help.
So as far as red flags, the ones that I'm hearing from you are that you became isolated. You became away from friends and family. You moved with is that what happened for you? And how do you teach red flags for people to start recognizing in their lives?
Yeah, so isolation is one thing. I would say that in my personal situation, I was completely removed. Completely removed. It wasn't just isolated. It was completely removed and then isolated. In the beginning, those first 2 years, there was nothing that felt possessive. There was nothing that stopped me or prevented me, from being with friends and family, going and coming as I would normally do. There was none of that. It wasn't until I was completely removed and under, like, complete control in their mind. But then obviously there's, in my mind afterwards, I was like, yeah, here you are, trusting and loving, building a family. This is the father of my child. Why would I think anything else? So this I don't I still to this day, still to this day when I think about what were the red flags, what were the red flags, there he was good. He was good. He waited until I was removed.
Mm.
So the way that I teach red flags today, with different people, is asking those questions that I was asking, earlier. Do you feel like you are, or are you hearing from people that you love that you're not around as much, or that they're seeing different characteristics in you, or that they're asking where are you at or why? Some of the additional things that I ask is, are you feeling fulfilled? Are you following your passions? Have some of the things that you used to do, are you not doing them anymore? And if not, why? For example, community involvement, right? If you're a part of, volunteering in some group, whether it's at your church or in the community, feeding the homeless or whatever it is that you do, that's what you love to do. Are you not doing that anymore because your partner feels insecure, because they're saying that you're spending your time somewhere else instead of with them? You look for these little subtle things that are actually pretty possessive.
No, they really are. And one of the things that I hear a lot, particularly from women who have had this happen to them, and I'm talking about doctors, lawyers, school teachers, every kind of person. They go, I don't know what I thought was the kind of person that this would happen to, but I didn't think it would be me.
That's
So
right.
there's a bit of a uh, maybe perhaps a class level of this, maybe, where people think, well, I'm not, I that's not what I would expect for that to happen to me. But the thing is, it transcends all class. It transcends all characteristics. It is something that can happen to anyone. And the worst thing is seeing the red flags, enduring the red flags, and thinking that it's going to change without any form of serious introspection and intervention and so forth, and then not having the willpower to do something about it after something violent occurs.
Well, and I think that falls back on that fear, right? So first and foremost, you're right. Domestic violence does not discriminate. You can be any class. You could be a billionaire, a millionaire, your average Joe Smith, or in poverty. Um, it's who's reporting what that these statistics come out, and I always feel like 30 to 60% of the statistics are not accurate anyways, because it's what's actually reported, and then what they actually want you to see, like how many layers does it need to go through before what gets approved actually gets out, and how far out is it? Usually statistics come out 2 years after they do a census of some sort, right? So again, it does not discriminate. I don't think that your title, your class, what money you have, what house you live in, what neighborhood you are in, it's just, where does your shame lie, right? Because you hear about celebrities going through domestic violence. Look at Rihanna. Uh, I mean, I can list a whole bunch of people, and then you look at people who are in government, people who are sitting in high seats, judges, attorneys. Going back to your point, yeah, we don't think it will happen to us. Why? Because we're not those people. So why are we thinking that we're attracting those people? But those are the predators. They see that you're a good person, and then they start chipping and chipping and chipping away.
Yeah. As far as like watching, you can learn a lot from somebody, particularly when you're courting them. How do they get mad? What do they do when they get mad?
Hmm.
How do they handle it? What is their, do they communicate? Do they isolate? Do they punch a wall? Because that's a serious red flag. People who punch walls, and people who get so angry they just can't calm it down. And what are some of the other red flags that you would warn people to be aware of?
Oh, well, I definitely suggest that they watch and figure out how do they treat their mother. Get to know their friends, get to know their coworkers. Who are they hanging around with? Who are they associating themselves with? What is their reputation with the people that they are in contact with on a consistent basis? Not your online crap, not the stuff that you're hiding behind the screen about, not your stories and your fairy tales of the most beautiful apple that's, one side shining and the other side rotten. Really look at and get embedded with the people that they are that they have a relationship with for consistent amount of time, because that will tell you more than the person will.
Mm. No, and this definitely, and I have to think about this from the male perspective too. I think that the mirror image of that is, you know, who is she hanging out with? What was her relationship with mom and dad?
Mm-hmm.
What are the ways in which previous relationships ended? How does she handle uh, getting angry? Is she proud when she tells you vindictive things that she may have done in the past? Because, like we were talking about, these kinds of this cruelty can operate at many different frequencies. And so, I love the work that you're doing because there's so much more to go in defending families and children, and providing those kinds of resources, because like you said, trying to find a place to go when you're escaping a violent environment, you might be blessed to live in a large metropolitan area where there may be more resources. You might also live in a small town in Utah, per se, or a small town in Wyoming. I'm not picking on Utah, um, but where there's fewer resources, but that you may hopefully have a social circle of people that that you can depend on if something happens. That maybe that's the answer. I don't know. What do you think? Maybe that's the answer when you're in a smaller town. Where is your safe house? Where do you go if things go badly for you? What is your plan if something does happen?
Well, and you know what? I want to tell you that it is most dangerous when your abuser senses that you're getting ready to leave. That's when it becomes more dangerous for the individual. When your abuser senses that you're getting ready to leave, that means they're going to lose this control, this power and control. And then it's more dangerous for the victim during that time. So I'm sharing this here with you and the listeners. When you're ready to leave, you're better off leaving in silence because of what I just shared. It becomes more dangerous when the abuser senses that you're getting ready to leave. A couple other things that I wanted to share with you also is that physical abuse is 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 so high. It's so much higher when you're dealing with a gambler. Gambling increases violence to the extreme. And if there is access to a firearm, there is a 500% higher chance that the weapon will be used in a domestic violence situation.
Okay, let's talk about the gambling, because I'm seeing this more and more in working with couples, a gambling addiction. And I've seen it completely in men who get into the gambling thing. I know that women gamble too, but what I've seen is 100% men who are gambling and keeping it a secret. And it's incredibly stressful. And it's also readily available wherever you are on your phone to get into this. And it's nice in therapy to be able to dig in on, let's talk about where this came from. What's the thrill of this? Why do we need to do this? But I'm hearing of men who have put their families in debt that are in the six figures, which just absolutely blows my mind. A man with small children that owes debt of over $100,000 to something stupid. So when you're talking about the gambler, is it that they feel backed into a corner? Is it part of the thrill seeking that also makes them more risky and being able to engage in violence? What is it about the gambler that makes them the propensity for violence more?
So I cannot call myself an expert in this
Okay.
area. I can just share what I believe based on what I've learned and what I've been exposed to. And that is, as a gambler, it's a 50-50, right? You have no control over if you're going to win or lose. And when you're gambling high wages and a lot is at stake, a house, a car, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I mean, can you imagine the impact that the adrenaline and like the out of control, the sense of how out of control you must feel as that losing person. I don't want to call them a loser, but as the losing opponent to gambling, you are basically gambling your life away. And if you think about it, what is the one thing that you have more control, power, and control over? Your partner.
All
they're the
right.
they're the closest thing to you. They love you. They are probably open and vulnerable and have a softer approach and want to help. But when you're feeling that you've lost all control because of your decisions, because you're going to lose the house, you're going to lose the car, you owe X amount of money, who knows who's after you, you feel almost powerless. And in order to regain that power, here's your partner, here's your kids. They have to respect you, they have to obey you, right?
Right.
So then you're using your your physiological strength and I don't want to sound too harsh here, but that manly voice, that stern person, that you can hurt somebody. So it's that fear that you're instilling. You're regaining your power and control that way because you're losing it the other way.
Right. And that losing would put somebody into the fight or flight mind, and they're kind of thinking reptilian anyway. And then they're facing somebody who is maybe poking at that deep shame, and they are already at a 10. And so they
Right.
will lash out. It's frightening. It really is frightening because of how easy it is to get into this stuff.
And how many people that want to help, so let's just play the scenario, right? The person is trying to help their partner who's the gambler, and the help that they're trying to offer or provide comes across as challenging, comes across as controlling, comes across as dominating. But it's not that. We just want to help. We love you enough to help you get through this, but to them, it's coming across as a challenge, not help. Because you can't help somebody who doesn't want the help. If that person doesn't even recognize that they have a problem, then you're just challenging them. That's how it comes across. And something else that I would really love to share here is that when you have the, buffer, bigger man and they have their little petite woman, you know, do you know that more of the stabbing and shootings from on the woman's side is because they are the petite ones? They're the petite ones because they feel like there was no other way to defend themselves, so they had to resort to a weapon or a tool.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense because there's a major physical power differential
Mhm.
there. Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's not funny. I mean, don't get my laughing as I'm laughing at any situation. It's just, when we really open our minds and see things from different perspectives, it gives insight that we just haven't seen or thought of before or even recognized.
You know, I can't imagine wasting that much money on the gambling thing and what it would feel like. See, I'm a good man. I waste all my money on cars. But with the nonprofit that you're putting together, the future of what you want to do particularly in the state of California, because it sounds like you have been able to get in front of legislators and talk to them about things and really have the ability to start momentum towards better legislation on this. What would you like to see in the future after this bill that you're working on has been put forward and implemented and everything like that? What would be a better way or the future for this?
Okay, so SB 553 was something that I was not a part of. I just prayed for
Okay.
it.
Okay. All right.
um, and I have volunteered for Cal legislation for gosh, almost 15 years. And so what I like to do is find loopholes. So what I like to do is find loopholes so that I can report that back to the person that writes legislation, and then we fill those gaps. She writes legislation and sends that in to close those gaps. So for example, if you are in a program that keeps your address confidential, right? As a survivor of domestic violence, whether it's stalking, double attempt homicide, whatever it is. Um, and then you go somewhere and they're requesting your physical address. Well, why? I'm in a protective program, so why would you mandate that I have to give my physical address? For example, the courthouse. Okay,
Yes.
so how is that protecting you when it's mandated somewhere else, right? So if it's a state legislative bill that says you can be in this program and it keeps your address confidential so you cannot be found, but then you go to the courthouse and that's public record and they mandate your address. There's a gap there,
Wouldn't have ever thought of that, but absolutely.
right? So I bring that back to the lady that writes the legislation, and lo and behold, a few years ago, we have another bill that was passed, and now you can go down to the courthouse, show that you're in a protective address program, and it is no longer public record.
That's good. That's very
Yeah.
good.
So these are the things that I have a passion for doing, and that's how I see the future. As back to your question, how do I see myself, tying all this stuff together? I'm never going to stop volunteering for finding gaps. I'm never going to stop confronting domestic violence in general, but the nonprofit as well, as relates to helping relocate these families, because children cannot learn what they need to at school, and they are not going to be emotional. You cannot feed them emotional intelligence if they are not feeling safe at home. Home is not the battlefield. Home is a place, their safe haven, and there's so much material that is out there on that as well. So for SB 553, the new law that passed for corporations to help prevent domestic violence spillover into the workplace, I would love to see resources, the same resources that are there for the gamblers, the porn addicts, the alcoholics, and the free 5 sessions of counseling. They should have something for real time victims as well. And I would that is like my next level whenever I get there. Right now, I'm stretched thin. If somebody is listening to this that knows me, they're gonna say, Agape, you cannot put one more thing on your list.
All of this that you've been through, because you've talked about this car accident that created this kind of seminal moment for you in, if I'm going to survive something like this, I really absolutely need to make the biggest impact that I can in my life. And I've gone through this this horrible violent situation and I want to do this work in the world. What was your childhood like? Because it feels like it's something that's a lifelong thing for you.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I kind of mentioned earlier, oh, I'm just used to, the verbal and physical violence. That's because that's pretty much where I was raised. I was not raised in the best of neighborhood. I was raised in inner city. Um, and my mother actually left when I was 2 years of age. And when she left me and my sister, who passed away about a year after she left, She was 2, I was 3. But my mother left the situation and the environment that she herself didn't want to be in because of the abuse. So she ran off, but left her kids there. So after my sister passed away, again, I was 3. My dad dealt with it the best he could at that time. There was no such thing as mental health or learning how to cope. And for a man, you got to be prideful and you know. So he pretty much checked out. And when I say checked out, I mean checked out. Worked third shift, slept all day, partied with his boys, and I was just kind of left to the wayside. Um, I don't have any other siblings. I don't I have no relationship with my mother whatsoever. The relationship with my dad is pretty estranged. But growing up, I was by myself, the outside, outdoors. What you don't learn at home, the streets will teach you. Okay.
Yes,
So I learned,
absolutely.
yeah, I learned that respect out there. And I navigated so much as a child, not knowing any of the stuff that we know today about emotional intelligence, about coping, about, finding who you are. These things were instinctively in me. For example, I had to walk to school in the morning, walk to school in the afternoon. I mean, walk from school from in the afternoon. But you know what I did? I signed up for every single after school program that there was possible. I was in plays, you name it, I was there. Okay. I was anywhere but home. And then after school, when the after school programs were over and done with, I went to the recreation park and I did gymnastics and I did woodcraft and I did all these things. See, back then you didn't need parent signature. You just showed up.
Yes.
So, the one thing that I did have for a small amount of time, I remember living in my grandparents' home up until about 5th grade. And their rule was, just be home by the time the street lights come on. But they were not into parenting me. My dad had me, I was his responsibility, and they reminded him all the time. However, they also realized that I was being neglected, but it's not like they stepped up. I had a roof over my head, but I really didn't receive the nurturing. I didn't receive a lot of things that you would, give to a child. And my dad definitely exposed me to things that most parents would protect their child from. So I would have to say that, my adolescent years to my teenage years, I was on my own. I was on my own outside. So the way I had to navigate and survive life as, adolescent and teenager really enforced and helped me believe in myself when I was 1,000 miles away and in that domestic violence situation, surviving that double attempt to homicide with my daughter. Just just us, that's it. And I said, if I made it this far for this long, I can do this. And trust me, there was so many doubts. I doubted myself every time that I felt confident. Every time I had a boost of confidence, I had my doubt. But I just kept looking back at the strength that the Lord gave me and the head that he gave me, because even though I grew up in the urban area and that inner city, I did not go to game banging. I did not get involved in drugs. I did not do those things. I saw it as such a young child. I knew what it did already, so I didn't have to find out. I already knew.
No. All of what you're doing, it makes sense. It really makes sense given the things that you've been through just early in life and the feeling alone and the times at which it sounds like there's been a lot of feeling alone, particularly early in your life. And now you're putting together all of these wonderful things that are helping others not be as alone as you were. And I would like to get out of your way here for just a second. And there's somebody listening to this who has gone through something horrible. They're fearful. They don't know what to do. They're scared about making a change in their life. They're fearful of a lot of things. And I'm just going to get out of your way and let you talk directly to that person who's listening.
Okay. You know you better than anybody else in the entire world. And no matter what other people think about you, no matter how they talk to you, no matter what category they put you in, you know your worth. And if you're struggling with trying to figure out who you are, say to yourself, identify to yourself who and what you are not, and act like you are your own child. Meaning, what would you tell your daughter? What would you tell your son if they were experiencing the same thing you are? What would you tell them? Because that advice of love, passion, support, and giving is the same exact thing that you need for yourself to get up, get out, and keep that strength going. And when you feel doubt, when you feel like you're weak, remind yourself who you're not and why you're doing what you're doing. Look into your own eyes as if those are your child's eyes, and give yourself that love and compassion the same exact way.
And on behalf of those people, I just want to thank you for your words and your experience in standing next to people who are scared and who are not knowing exactly what to do. And what I've really been struck with by talking with you today, it is the way in which that you have placed this issue not only at the forefront of your life, but you've actually gone beyond and you've fought for it for thousands of people that you don't even know. Because that feeling that you have had in your life of not knowing what to do and feeling alone and feeling stranded and feeling cornered and being hurt is something that you're wanting to as eliminate as much as you possibly can for other people who are struggling with this. And your passion, your organization, your willingness to share your own personal story, even though it is painful, even though it might be embarrassing, even though there's probably emotions that are tied up in it that we haven't even talked about yet. But for your ability to share that and to give strength to people who are out there and they're scared and they're suffering and they're wondering if the situation that they're in is going to get worse than it is right now. Just thank you for the your ability to come forward and to share what you've done and for making a difference in the world.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I strongly believe that your mindset is your biggest asset, and therefore it should be nourished to the pristine.
Absolutely, absolutely. Agape, thank you so much. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to the Mindful Mutiny podcast. And in a lifetime, there are more decisions than anybody can count. Living the highest version of yourself is the most rewarding thing that you can do. Make incredible, positive, risky, and bold decisions to be the highest version of you. Now go be something great.